There are certain things about you that are valuable, but those things will quickly become unimportant to a woman if you're making one of the following mistakes. And it doesn't matter what you accomplish in life. It doesn't matter how cool your haircut is, how great your clothes are, if you've been working out, how well you're going to treat the woman, and so on. When you're making these mistakes, it just changes everything. It causes a woman to just see you as being lower value than her, and that doesn't work. Women want to be able to look at you as being more valuable than them, and that doesn't mean that you have to have accomplished things in life. It doesn't mean that you have to have things. Otherwise, guys who are at school, university, in casual jobs, part-time, low-paying full-time jobs, they wouldn't be able to get a girlfriend. No one would get anywhere. So it's not about the stuff that you have. It's the feeling that she gets where she feels like you're higher value than her. That switches her attraction on. But if you're causing her to feel like she's higher value than you, then she's just not going to be interested. So the first one is seeming like you're auditioning rather than assessing. I'm going to give you a technique that fixes this particular problem. And I'll first point out why it's a problem, right? Women don't want to be talking to a guy who seems like he's auditioning for the role of getting to be her boyfriend or auditioning for the role of, do I get to have sex with you sort of thing. And a guy may be coming across in that way in a very obvious way where he's desperately doing that, but he can also be doing it while he's being quite cool and confident, right? Where even though he's a cool, confident guy, the woman still gets the sense that he is auditioning. He's still hoping to get the part, right? If he says the right things, if he does the right things, then she'll let him have sex with her or let him be her boyfriend, right? He'll get to get that position. He has that type of mindset. And as a result, the woman naturally feels like she is in the higher value position, right? She is the one who's going to decide whether or not he gets to have a chance with her. And that's not how women want to feel. So a beginner level technique that any guy can use when interacting with women is to use what I call the chemistry check. So this is where you are curious to see if you and her click and if there's a spark between you and her. Is there a good enough spark between you and her for you to be interested in something happening? So when you go from the auditioning mindset of, do I get the part, to the assessing mindset where you're checking to see if there's chemistry between you and her, you're checking to see if you and her click, it completely changes your energy. It completely changes your body language. It completely changes the way that you're talking and reacting to her. And guess what? That's what women do to you. When you're interacting with a woman, what does she do? She checks to see if there's enough of a spark between you and her. What the chemistry is like. Is there enough chemistry here for something to happen? She is assessing. She is checking. Yet what most guys do, which lowers their value and therefore causes the woman to really struggle to feel attracted to him and want anything to happen, is that they are in auditioning mode. They're trying to get a chance with a woman. And as I said, some guys are very desperate and obvious about it, but other guys, they can be quite cool and confident, but the woman still senses, she still picks up in the subtleties of how he's talking to her, how he's reacting to her, how he's behaving, the sort of things that he's saying, that he's hoping that she chooses him, she picks him, she gives him the part, she gives him the role. All right, you get to have sex with me, you get to be my boyfriend sort of thing. He gets the part, he gets chosen by the woman. Good job, you got selected, you get the part, right? But when a woman senses that, she naturally feels like she's in the higher value position. Whereas if, for example, you were a man who had loads of women interested in you, and you could attract women everywhere you went. It was so easy for you. Girls liked you. They're always trying to get with you. You had women in your life. It was very easy for you. When you met a woman, you wouldn't be trying to audition to hopefully get a chance with her because you're not needy or desperate. Instead, you would be naturally assessing whether or not you and her click and there was enough chemistry between you and her for you to actually be fully interested in her, right? Whether you'd want something between you and her to happen, because you could easily attract other women. So you don't just have to accept a woman that you're not really clicking with or there's not enough chemistry with. And guess what? That's the position that women are in. They know that it's very easy for them to get sex because male attraction is different to female attraction. Men are primarily visual, right? She looks good. Yes, I'll have sex with her. It's basically as simple as that. But for women, it's like, how does she feel when she's interacting with you? Right? And that's what a lot of guys struggle with, to make the woman feel attracted. They're making all these subtle mistakes that I'm talking about in this video. Yet for women, because it's so simple for them, all they've got to do is say yes, right? They're not just interacting with a man and going, yes, 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 and just having sex with anyone. Instead, she wants to check, are they actually clicking? Is there enough chemistry there for her to want something to happen? And as a result, she's in that assessing mode. And when a guy picks up that he's being assessed, in most cases, he then tries harder to get the part, right? But you can actually flip the script. You're allowed to do this. And women actually prefer it when you're in that confident position where you can be the one who is honestly, talking to her, showing some interest, but you're still assessing. You're still seeing if there's enough there for you to want to pursue. And simply because of that energy, you'll notice that women treat you differently. You'll notice that they show more attraction for you, more respect, more appreciation. They put in more effort into the interaction rather than when you're trying to audition to hopefully get the part and therefore lowering your value. Number 2, over-explaining yourself instead of owning what you say. So if you keep clarifying what you meant when you're talking to a woman or checking to see if she's still interested after you've said something, or if you keep justifying your words or your position on things, she sees that as low value. A man who believes in what he says doesn't feel the need to make sure that the woman always approves. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't care about anything that you're saying and you should just say whatever and, be messy in how you talk and so forth. And if the woman doesn't like it, yeah, I don't care. It's not about taking it to that extreme. Instead, when a guy is talking to a woman and he says something and then he has to explain it further to make sure that she understands and she's not losing interest in him, she picks up on that. And she sees it as him being lower value. Because if he was a valuable man, if he did believe in himself, if he wasn't coming from that position of lower value trying to get a woman who's higher value than him, then he wouldn't feel that need to constantly explain himself, because he knows that even though what he is saying may not come out perfectly and she may not understand every little detail, at the end of the day, he's a valuable man and he knows that he has value and he doesn't need to constantly be peddling and scrambling to hopefully make her see that he has value. He knows that he has value, so he can relax. And when you're able to relax like that around a woman, she naturally looks at you as a man who has value. You're not a man who's coming from a place where you're hoping to get a woman who's higher value than you if you can just say everything right. The next one on the list of 5 things that you shouldn't do around women because it lowers your value is seeming like you're willing to accept anything about her. If she gets a sense that when you're interacting with her, you're willing to overlook any bad behavior, any signs of disrespect from her towards you, and you're essentially looking at her as being perfect no matter what, then she sees that as a lower value position, right? You're coming from a place where you see her as being higher value than you, and you're basically willing to accept anything about her because, wow, she's got value and you need some of that. Yet, if you have value as a man, and you'll notice this with guys who are naturally good with women, you will naturally start to lose a bit of interest in her if she's behaving in a way that seems a bit disrespectful, or if she's behaving in a way that you don't like, or if she says some things about herself or reacts and responds in a way that you don't really like, then you're not going to be seeing her as perfect. Right? And if you're honestly using that chemistry check, she's going to pick up on that, where you start to look at her a little bit differently. You start to have a bit of a different reaction to her, and she can sense that. And if you've been making her feel attracted during the interaction, and she senses that she might actually be losing some of your interest, then she becomes the one who is peddling and scrambling. Right? She's the one who is going to lose what she wants. Right? She starts to feel like she's going to lose something valuable because you are not a guy who's just going to accept whatever, right? Because you're not a desperate guy. Another thing that will lower your value in a woman's eyes is being uncomfortable with silence. So when talking to a woman, your aim is not to have loads of silences in the conversation, really long pauses to show her that you're comfortable with pauses. But if a pause does happen, a woman is going to be looking to see how you react. And if you are feeling like you're lower value in that situation, in the dynamic between you and her, then you will naturally start to display the sort of body language and energy and reactions of a guy who is worried, who is panicking, who is scrambling, right? And you may try to hide that, but if, for example, she notices that you get a bit fidgety and shuffling your body language around, and so, yeah, tell me about, and you get into that type of conversation style, she can sense that you're worried about losing her interest. But a guy who sees himself as a valuable guy, a guy who's confident, will be able to handle the pause, be able to handle the silence and not worry. And it doesn't mean that he should keep the silence going forever and just wait for her to talk. That'll show her. I'll show her who has the power. I'll just sit here in silence and I'll even stare at her, right? I'm just so confident I'll stare at her in silence. He doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to prove himself. Instead, if there's a silence, if there's a pause, he'll just feel comfortable. He'll feel like there isn't a problem because he's a valuable guy, right? He's not going to lose her interest just because there's a bit of a pause or a bit of a silence. She is interested. He knows that, and he's not going to worry. And by the way, before I give you the fifth and final one on the list, I'll let you know that if you don't know, I run the Master Attraction community. And that's where guys are learning my attraction techniques. They're learning what to say and do to attract women. And the guys who are learning that and applying it are experiencing amazing results, right? Guys kissing women within minutes of meeting them, going out and having sex with women on the first night, the first time he's ever done that. Happened for another member. Another member slept with new women multiple days in a row. Another member did that. Another member had a woman asking to be his girlfriend after they had sex. Success story after success story after success story. It just keeps going on and on and on. So after this video, if you're interested in learning my attraction techniques, make sure you check out Master Attraction. And now number 5 on the 5 things you shouldn't do around a woman because it lowers your value, and that is needing her reactions to feel confident about your value. So the thing is, a guy may be quite accomplished in life, he may have a good job, he may dress well, he may do this or that, and if he's interacting with a woman and she then senses that he's not quite sure about his value in her eyes, and he's waiting for signs of approval from her before he can feel good about himself, then that lowers his value in her eyes. Now, if that same woman were to interact with another guy who wasn't as accomplished as him, right? He was just working in a normal job, he wore quite normal clothes, but he was interacting with her in a way where he was certain about himself. He was giving himself approval rather than looking for her approval. Then she would look at him as a guy who isn't looking up to her as the valuable one and hoping to get a chance with her. Instead, he actually sees himself as quite valuable. And some guys watching this may be thinking, well, no, but she wouldn't want him because he's not that accomplished in life. But the reality is that most men and women get together when the guy is still trying to figure things out in life, when he's still working in quite an ordinary job, or even guys get together with their girlfriend when they're working a casual job or a part-time job. For most women, it's not about what you've already accomplished in life. It's what sort of potential you have as a man, right? What sort of feeling is she getting from you? Are you the sort of man that she can look up to and respect? Or is it a case where you're looking at her as the higher value one and you're hoping that she gives you a chance somehow, right? What sort of feeling are you giving her? It's those subtle things that allow guys to get results with women even though they haven't been working out. Not that there's anything wrong with working out. It does make a guy look more attractive. Or guys who are short and they get with a pretty girl. Or guys who are a little bit chubby and they get with a pretty girl. Or a guy who's still living with his parents and he gets with a pretty girl, right? Because he's able to interact with her and give her the feeling that she's looking for. She's able to look at him as a guy who has value, right? She's feeling attracted to him. And even though he's not accomplished yet in life, she's still feeling attracted to him. And that doesn't mean he can get every woman out there, because there are women who will only want to be with a guy if he's rich and successful, right? Those women exist. But the majority of women really are assessing you based on how you're making them feel as you interact with them, which is why you can start interacting with a woman and make her feel attracted and be kissing her within minutes, going home with her and having sex with her within 30 minutes of meeting her, right? That sort of stuff does happen, even though a guy is just an ordinary guy. It's important that you understand that and you get the subtle stuff right, because no matter what you achieve in life, the same type of rejection is going to happen for you if you're interacting with women in a way that conveys lower value, right? It doesn't matter how much you achieve. It doesn't matter how cool your hairstyle is. It doesn't matter how great your clothes are. If she gets that sense from you where she feels like you're lower value, she's just not going to be able to feel that attraction that causes her to want to have sex or a relationship with you. But if she's getting that feeling where you seem higher value than her, she starts to look at you as a man that she would be lucky to get with, right? It's not a case of you're lucky to get a chance with her. Instead, she starts to get that feeling with you. I just hope that you can understand this and not waste years or decades of your life thinking that one day if you achieve more in life, then women will suddenly start to see your value, because if you're unable to make women feel your value when you're interacting with them, then you're going to continue to get rejected by the women that you want. And you may get chances with women that you're not attracted to or you don't really want. And what's the point of going to all that effort in your life then of trying so hard to achieve things when you're not even going to get the sort of woman that you really want to be with? You're not going to be proud of her. You're not going to feel good about yourself. When right now you could be shifting the dynamic and making the woman see you as higher value and therefore start attracting the types of women that you really want.